Today we're going to talk about a free online course we've developed called Introduction to Web Accessibility. We will learn about some of the tools and techniques in this course for making websites more accessible to people with vision impairments. My name is Eve Andersson. I'm a manager in accessibility engineering here at Google. And we have a distinguished panel to my left of accessibility experts. On my far left is Vint Cerf. He is a VP at Google and our chief internet evangelist. Some have also referred to him as one of the fathers of the internet. We also have Chen. He is an engineer in accessibility and he's one of the developers of this course. We have one more panelist who wasn't able to be with us today. His name is Raman. He is a research scientist at Google, and he works on accessibility. He also helped develop this course, and we'll see him later in a video. All right, the first question is for you, Vint. Vint, why should software developers learn about accessibility?
Well, let's start with a very fundamental point. Not all of the websites in the world are readily accessible to people who need some assistance. If you happen to be blind or have vision impairment, you can't see the web pages and you can't interact with them in the way others can. If you happen to be deaf, or in my case, I'm hearing impaired, there are times when you can't actually quite make out the audio, and it would help a lot if we could see captions or written material to go along with it. There are other people who have a variety of other problems that have to be accommodated. And so this whole notion is about assistance to make things useful and accessible for everyone. The reason that it's important to do that is twofold. First, it's the right thing to do. We want everyone to take advantage of and be able to use the benefits and fruitful content available on the internet. But perhaps more important, it's ironic that the one tool that's been invented in the last 70 years, the computer, is the one thing that can in fact make things accessible because it's so flexible. We can write programs to adapt and accommodate, and yet that's the one area that has been poorly treated for many, many years. It's almost as strange as the telephone invented by Alexander Graham Bell, intending to help the deaf and being useless to them until somebody finally invented things like email and teletypes and so on. So we have an obligation to take this new technology and make it work for everyone on the planet, regardless of the needs that they may have for assistance.
Thank you, Vint. So one of the things you said was that we want the web to work for everyone, and it currently doesn't. Charles, could you show us what the web looks like to someone who's blind?
Sure, Eve. So if we switch to my screen here, I have a very simple example running, and what you'll see is I'm going to go for it twice. The first time, I'm going to just show you what it looks like visually, and then I'll show you what someone with a visual impairment would experience the site as. So as you can see, I have this page up here. Looks like a simple enough page. It has a title, button, and alert. There's a button, and if I click it, I'll get an alert. So I'm just going to click it with the mouse. Clicked it, the button has been pressed, no problems. But now let's see what a user with a visual impairment would experience. So I'm going to turn on my screen reader here.
ChromeVox is red button and alert example tab.
All right, so now my screen reader is enabled. Let me navigate through this and let's experience what I hear.
Click the button below to generate an alert. Smile image.
Smile image, okay. That was interesting.
If this were a real page, we would have more content here.
Wait, where was the button? Okay, maybe it was a smile image. Let's try that.
Smile image.
Okay, I'm going to try and press enter here to click it. Okay, nothing's happening. Well, I'm a really good screen reader user, so I know that I can try to generate some sort of fake click event. Let me try and force click this.
Clicked. Smile image.
It says I clicked it, but I'm not hearing anything. As you can see, this is a pretty broken experience, and it's really difficult to use if you have a visual impairment, even for something as simple as this page.
Thanks for that. As I said earlier, TV Raman can't be with us here today, but we spent some time with him yesterday, and we'll see a video where he talks a little bit more about the content of the course, about accessible development, as well as how we came up with doing this course.
When you put up a website or you write a web page, you actually don't know who your audience is. Your audience could be in the United States, your audience could be worldwide. Your audience might be English speaking, your audience might be speaking another language as their first language. So it's all about reach. And if it's all about reach, then optimizing your content to cater to the widest variety of needs is something in everybody's interest. And we thought, wouldn't it be nice to try using this new medium of online education to teach something that deeply affects the online experience? So can we use this online medium of web courses and web-based education to teach web developers how to make their websites and web contents maximally useful and usable to all of their audience? So during this class, we will both teach you how to enhance your content for accessibility, and then also teach you to use tools that check whether you have done the needed work to make your content accessible, and also give you an opportunity to use tools that let you experience firsthand what your site feels like to someone who cannot see and is trying to listen to your site. So in a nutshell, we'll teach you techniques for enhancing your content. We will show you tools that let you first check your content, and you'll get warnings and tips on how you can fix it. And then you'll fix it and actually be able to experience it before and after. We want to keep things simple for this first course, and so we are going to narrow down and focus on things you can do when you create your content to make it work well for users who are blind or users who have low vision. That isn't to say that those are the only problems you need to worry about, but this will get you a part of the way to starting to think about accessibility and about all your users. So when you think about accessibility, don't think of it as something special for a few users. Think of it as designing your content and site so that it works for everyone independent of their needs who might happen to come to your site. So accessibility is really about you reaching the maximum number of devices, the maximum number of users, the maximum number of needs and abilities. Our goal is to whet your appetite and get you interested, and at the end of the course, we will point you at additional resources that will let you deep dive into specific areas. So enjoy the course, and I hope to see you at the other end of this course where you are making your sites address a lot more of the accessibility issues that arise.
So in the video, Raman gave us a brief overview of the content of the course, and he mentioned that there are tools that let you as a web developer experience a website as a blind person does, as well as to help you make a site more accessible. Can you show us a little bit more about these tools?
Sure, Eve. So the two tools that we'll be using primarily in this course are Accessibility Developer Tools and ChromeVox. Both of these are extensions that are freely available on the Chrome Web Store, and you can go ahead and download them. As you can see on my screen, I have these tools installed. So let's start with Accessibility Developer Tools. These tools are some really simple, really quick audits that will tell you if you have problems with your web page. Now let's try running this audit on that example, and let's see what it tells us. So I'm going to go to Tools. I'm going to bring up Developer Tools. And now if I switch into my Audits panel, I can select Accessibility, and I can ask it to run the audit. So I'm going to run the audit. And you see right here, I get a warning. And the warning tells me that images should have an alt attribute. Let's go ahead and let's try and fix this. Smile.png. That's why it was saying smile image rather than the actual text of the button. So let's try and fix this. Let me switch over to my text editor here. Okay, so here is where I have the image. I'm going to go ahead and add alt text that makes sense. So alt text equals I'm a button, click me, smiley face. Okay, so let's save this, and let's go back to the page and let's see what the audit says this time. Okay, as you can see, I no longer have that warning. So that's good. That's definitely an improvement. And now let's move on to the next tool, ChromeVox. So ChromeVox is our screen reader for Chrome OS. It's also available as a Chrome extension that anyone can install and try out. As a web developer, this tool is really nice because it gives you a way to experience what a blind user would experience directly in your browser without any real additional setup aside from just installing the extension and enabling it. So I'm going to go ahead and enable the extension now, and let's try running through this page again, and let's see what it sounds like.
ChromeVox is ready.
Okay.
Button and alert example, tab.
Okay, so let's go ahead and read through this page now.
Click the button below to generate an alert. I'm a button. Click me, smiley face.
Okay, so that's nice. It told me what this button has. Let's see.
If this were a real page, we would have more content here.
Okay, well, from the text of that image, I got the impression that it was a button, but it still didn't tell me that it was actually a button from a screen reader's perspective. Also, if I move over it, I think I still won't be able to click it. Let's see.
I'm a button. Click me, smiley face.
Yeah, okay, so I still can't activate it. So I think we still need a little bit of work here. So let's go ahead and fix this. Now, the nice thing is, even though this is a pretty broken experience that we're starting with, it's relatively easy to fix and correct, as I will proceed to demonstrate now. So let me switch back to the code. And now, one of the first things to fix is to make sure that this is actually reported to screen readers as a button. So I'm going to add an ARIA role. So role equals button. Kind of makes sense. And let's also make this button focusable and respond to the enter key. So I'm going to put tab index equals 0, and I'm going to add a key down handler. And of course, I need to write the function for a key down handler, which is really quick. All right, so this should do the trick. Let's reload and let's see what this is like.
Window button and alert example. Button and alert example. I'm a button. Click me, smiley face, button.
Okay, so as you can see now, this time it actually reported that it was a button, and let's try clicking it. Okay, this was a little bit better. It responded to the enter key, but still, as a blind user, I wouldn't have heard the message that came up. So let's go ahead and let's fix that. So all I need to do here is, because it's an alert, I just need to give it an ARIA role of alert. So role equals alert. And let's try this again.
Window button and alert example tab. Button and alert.
Okay, so I'm going to try this again.
Click the button below to generate an alert. I'm a button. Click me, smiley face, button.
Okay. And now I'm going to press enter.
The button has been pressed. Alert.
Yay, so now this all works. So as you can see, with just a little bit of code, I was able to take a completely broken experience and make it work reasonably well.
Thanks for that demo, Charles. So I saw in that you were editing HTML and JavaScript.
Yes.
What do people need to know before they can embark on this course? Who's this course for?
Glad you asked that. So this course is for web developers. You do need to have some basic understanding of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. But really, it's for all levels of web developers. You don't necessarily have to be a JavaScript ninja to do well in this course.
Well, that looked pretty simple, actually.
Yeah, so I think what was helpful here was that the starting design was actually fairly simple, fairly straightforward. There was nothing in the design itself that made it inherently inaccessible. You have a button, you click on it, you get a reaction. As such, if the missing piece for accessibility is at a technical level where things aren't labeled, or you don't have the right ARIA properties, or you don't have the right keyboard handlers, then it is really simple to take these problems and address them, and you can fix them in a short amount of time. And these are also the type of solutions that we'll be covering in the course. The course is a great starting point to help you learn about these fixes.
So I would take away from this example, Charles, two things. First of all, the tool that helped you discover that there was a problem could be very helpful if you have a significant amount of code, having something staring over your shoulder and saying, don't forget you need to do something about that, I think is very helpful. And you demonstrated that for at least some of the problems that are identified, the fix is not all that hard. I think on a deeper level, though, understanding how to create designs that can be made accessible is a much tougher proposition. You really have to put your head in somehow in the same place as someone who's using this with the need for assistance. And so, although this course is at the beginning, so to speak, at some point I hope we can help people understand what it means to do really good, accessible engineering. And that, of course, is the ultimate objective to all of what we're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely, Vint. At a deeper level, design matters, right? So having a good accessible design, or at least a design that can be made accessible, is key. We can do all the technical fixes we want to, but that's not going to compensate for a really bad design if you start with that.
Exactly right.
So how can people do accessible design?
I think it's about thinking through your entire workflow and making it so that there are multiple ways of approaching it and multiple ways of getting through it. So for example, you don't really want to build a program that says you must use a mouse to drive it. Mm-hmm. Instead, think of the task, right? Something as simple as, say, a drag and drop operation. If you made it so that the only way to add something was via drag and drop, then you have a serious accessibility problem, because for a user with physical impairments who can't use a mouse, or for a blind user who wouldn't be able to use a mouse and aim it properly, it will not work for that audience. However, if you took a step back and thought about the problem you're trying to solve, which is to get the user intent of they take something from bucket A and they're moving it into bucket B, if you then think of the problem in that sense, then you have a lot of options open, because then it doesn't necessarily have to be drag and drop. Drag and drop is one of the ways of moving something from A into B, but you could also do it via keyboard by selecting it first and then doing a cut and paste operation. So really it's about thinking through the problem that you're trying to solve, and then thinking through multiple ways of letting the user indicate what they wish to do and conveying the results back to the user, and not forcing them into just one mode of doing things.
Do you suppose now that we're beginning to see computers getting better and better at actually understanding speech, that we will get into a more conversational interaction with some of these applications so we can actually tell it what it is we're trying to accomplish and have it figure out the best way to do that?
I certainly hope so. That's one of the things that I think is really cool about technologies like Google Now, and some of the things that we've shown off at Google I/O. The nice thing too is I think we really want to think a step ahead of just the computer doing exactly what the user said, but rather having some level of anticipation and assistance so that the user doesn't necessarily have to mechanically go through every individual step, but rather have a smoother workflow where they can perform a task and have efficient task completions.
From what you described, Charles, it sounds like doing things that help people with accessibility needs has the potential to help everybody streamline what they're doing on the computer.
Bingo.
And
that's really something that I think everyone should strive for.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eve.
So jumping up one level, I want to come back to something, Vint, that you touched on earlier. You mentioned, in other words, that the internet is supposed to level the playing field for everyone. Can you comment a little bit more on that?
Well, I think, as Charles has just demonstrated, the internet is filled with boulders and mountains that have to be either climbed or moved in order to make it move, preferably to make it a really level playing field. What I found most interesting about Charles' demonstration is the level of detail with which you have to think in order to imagine what your software is going to be like for someone who's blind. And you'll have to similarly try to think your way through what happens if you have a user who's deaf or has some other impairment. What I think is fundamental here, and the reason it's important for this class to be taken by everyone who's interested in making web experiences useful for everyone, is the degree to which you have to imagine how this is going to behave for someone who needs assistance. This is all about harnessing the computer power that we know is in those boxes to help someone who needs a little bit of assistance to experience the web in the way that is needed for that particular person. The thing I want to emphasize here is that the diversity of assistance needs. It's not a simple thing to say, I will do it this way for anyone who has vision impairment, and I'll do it this way for someone who has an audio problem. In fact, every single person with one of these variable challenges may need different nuances, different kinds of assistance, and so we need a lot of flexibility built into this environment. It's also, I think, very important not to imagine that you can build a web application and then somehow sprinkle accessibility pixie dust on it and have it work. It's much more fundamental than that, and that's why this class is so important. So I want to encourage everyone who has a desire to make their web pages and their other applications accessible to everyone to take this class, absorb what you learn from it, and then apply it, because that will, in fact, make the internet be for everyone.
Thank you for watching. This is the end of our GDL on our new course, Introduction to Web Accessibility. To close us out, Vint, what should people watching this GDL do next?
That's easy. Sign up for the class, take it, absorb it, and apply it.